Welcome to the Infinity Loop Group. I'm Riley.
I'm Krista.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. This next chapter we're diving into is awareness. So important, so relevant to everything that we are talking about spiritually and everything that's going on in the world. You know, it's so easy to get caught up on one side of the story, one aspect of things, but where awareness is really about the bigger picture, that there is always more to the story. There is information that we need to dive deeper in and be aware of how our emotions might be getting in the way of the situation. In pure awareness, you are outside of time at speed of light. Time ceases to exist and you are everywhere. You can travel through time spiritually. Martha Beck. And I really think that is ultimately saying is when you choose to be aware of the situation, you aren't constricted by your emotions of what's going on. You are open to more information and seeing the vision from everyone else's perspective.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's on one level for sure. Martha Beck has done work with Deepak Chopra, which this chapter is going to be on his work, which I think Deepak is a very gifted teacher. It's really interesting because when she talks about even in the pure awareness, which is the highest level of awareness, which we're about to talk about, you really are outside of time. You really are in a different field. And what does that mean to be able to travel spiritually, which is the infinite possibilities of what they're even learning, of how much you can go back and see things differently and how that can heal your trauma.
Well, it's like the brain study of your brain doesn't know the difference between an experience and a memory. So if you can choose to go back to a maybe difficult memory and choose to experience it differently, it will literally change how your body reacts to it, how you remember it. Like it is moldable. Yeah, right. And it's
malleable
because it's one of those things, it's the perspective you choose to hold on it. It's not that what happened to you isn't terrible anymore, but that you can choose to gain strength from that terrible thing.
Mm-hmm. So as we hear this chapter, thinking about the chapter coming from our 8, which is like being the spider on the ceiling that has 8 little surfaces to see or sense from. And that's really it. This is chapter is
the spider
foundational.
has the 8 legs and the 8 eyes.
Yeah,
right?
Some they see, some they sense from. I mean, that's what's really interesting. Again, this is foundational to contemplative practice and seeing differently and living in the infinity loop. So here we go. Deepak Chopra teaches 3 levels of awareness. I'll touch on one aspect of it that will serve what we need for awareness. I've taken what he teaches and blended it with others' language and my own. Constricted awareness is what happens when our bodies, hearts, and minds constrict because of how we perceive our world in the moment. We feel separate and negative emotions flood us. Deepak says it's like walking into a room with the lights out. Because we're not aware and our sight is limited, we bump into the furniture. I teach this all the time.
To me, it's so much of how when we react from our constricted awareness, we don't usually fix the problem, but make it worse.
Right. We're bumping into the furniture. Right. We are constricted. We cannot see.
I would say it's almost beyond bumping into the furniture. It's like trying to clean the room with the lights out. right? Like yeah, oh, it looks clean
Oh my
now.
God, that's so good.
It's-
Like, because you
it's-
think you're actually
Correct.
doing something.
Yes, exactly. 'Cause
Usually,
bumping around, you're not doing anything. But imagine trying to clean a room with the lights out. You go you go, oh,
love that.
this surface looks clean, but you don't realize you've bumped everything off of this table to where now it's on the floor or in the corner or.
that's so great, because that is why we just open our mouth and just keep spewing in constricted awareness, is we actually think we're cleaning something up.
Right, and the mess just actually keeps piling up instead. It gets to be a bigger problem than if you were to take a breath, look out. Well, maybe there's some truth in what they're calling out. Okay, maybe there's constricted awareness too, and I cannot take it so personally. The 4 agreements, and build from there.
So that's great. You're just explaining the second level, which is expanded awareness. When we're able to witness ourselves as the watcher, right? So that's the first step, realizing that we're constricted. Our whole bodies, hearts, and minds open up with a spaciousness that sees the bigger view. That's coming from our 8. We see we have options. We breathe deeply and have access to our brains. This he explains as expanded awareness. We walk into the room with the lights on. We don't trip over the furniture. We're more aware of where we are, how we are, and what's around us. So that's the first step, is as soon as we breathe,
the lights come on.
The lights come on, and we're already getting access to our frontal lobe, and we're getting a spaciousness. And that's the only time that we really should be reacting, quote unquote. Now we can actually, instead of reacting, we can respond. I mean, unless we're reacting because it's truly the benefit of a fear. Something's coming at you. That's different. We're not talking about that. We're talking about everyday occurrences. We're not talking about someone jumping out from behind a car in the middle of the night with a knife at your throat.
Right, we're talking about workplace environments. We're
relationships.
People that
circumstances.
people that you want or have to have in your life that you need to build healthy relationships and communication with.
Or even your relationship with yourself and your circumstances. Something happens and you get in constricted awareness.
Healthy self-talk, right? So often something bad happens and then we beat ourselves up about it, and that doesn't make the situation better.
Or we go to fear. To fear. We're in constricted awareness. In pure awareness, it's like walking into a room and we're able to see all the way through the back wall, because we realize the walls are made of glass and we can see for miles. That's when we're the watcher of the watcher and most aware of ourselves and see reality for what it is. It's a consciousness, or what's called pure consciousness. I want to live in that house where the walls are made of glass and I can see the beauty of the hills and the valleys with a perspective that makes me calm, clear, and compassionate, with full access to what I'm experiencing in my body and brain. If I'm not distracted by my own constricted awareness, I show up more for the others in the room. That's the leadership piece, being calm and clear. By becoming aware of the constriction in my body, I take a deep breath and choose to expand my heart and body and observe myself. Now I'm not trapped in that state, but include anything I need to pay attention to as I move to the watcher of my experience in expanded awareness. This is also reminding me, Riley, of the chapter We Row Our Way Home. When we're up close, it's like you can almost feel the constriction, or you're feeling like, oh, I need to, have tenderness for my heart. And then we pull back like on the rowing machine, we're rowing, and we now are in the field that is just watching that little constricted person that's suffering. And we are actually going, I don't have to over-identify with my little constricted self.
Well, and I really wanted to emphasize on how much of a leader this is, because when we take the second to not respond from our react from our restricted awareness, it also creates and gives a moment for them take a breath and be a little more calm. Because when you do it, it's lowering the temperature of the room, right? Mm-hmm. And so it naturally will create for the other person, even if they don't have this tool or this practice, just creating that space. This is, again, why we talk about so much of this changes the world, because not only does it how you interact with people change, but how they interact with you will naturally change from these practices.
And another thing that Martha Beck teaches is about entrainment, these brain states of how you can lift other people's level of awareness when you are holding that high level of awareness.
Right, like when you ask questions from a non-judgmental place, right? You can really create the space for them to question their own way of thinking without being arrogant or condescending in ways of like, you already know where you're going. No, you just allow them to think out loud and ask the right questions for them to question their own.
Right. It's true inquiry is the curious. It's not critical. It's not judgments in disguise. It's not leading somebody in a, like you said, condescending questions. It's true curiosity. It's like being on the side of the river in your lounge chair, drinking your favorite drink. You watch drama and stress float down the river while you sip your drink. The cool breeze blows over you in the shade as you discern what can float on by and what you need to pay attention to. In awareness, we learn the art of paying attention to what's worthy of our attention. The disturbance may be there for a reason, or it may just need to float on by. We don't have to be disturbed by our disturbance. And that's a very important point. We don't have to be anxious about our anxiety. We don't have to be depressed about our depression. We don't have to over-identify. We can allow these very uncomfortable feelings and temporarily feelings or emotions or states to come up, but we don't have to go, I shouldn't feel this. Oh no, it's right. You just
there should
allow
be
it.
No, I shouldn't feel anything, right? That's the negative self-talk. It's okay. No one is supposed to be so elevated that they never feel anything. It's about not responding inappropriately to those feelings.
Yeah, and really it's our resistance to, because it's our resistance to these states that really cause the problems. And Eckhart Tolle teaches, who teaches pure awareness, and that we really are pure awareness, presence, says even as you do this work, you could really be practicing this and living in this, and all this kind of anxiety and yuckiness can come up because it's just been so much in your system for so long. It's just residual. So you go, oh, isn't that interesting? Oh, why am I'm thinking good thoughts. What's going on that this is going on in my physiology? It's like, you know what? Just let it come out and come and pass through. It's okay. You are riding the waves.
Well, and that is also where physical practices can truly come in handy, right? That is why we choose to work out. That is why we choose to do breathing exercises. That's why we choose to do cold exposure, because these are types of practices that help move that type of energy.
Right. And it's not that we are saying when negative feelings come up, we can't have them, because we may need to have them come up to sit with it and grieve and heal. We may need to feel certain things. This is different. There's a place for that. That's the skill. And then there's a place to go, ooh, this is some stuck energy. I need to change my physiology and get my head in a better space. Well, it's always the both and.
We grow from the experience, not the lack of the experience, right? So you only grow once you experience it, whether it's positive or negative, right? So trying to not experience something that's negative is trying to stop yourself from growing, right? If you are having a problem where you're experiencing something over and over again, it's in my opinion, the universe telling you that this is something you need to grow in. And so the more you try and not experience that, the more you're choosing to not grow.
When we're the watcher of the watcher, we sense, discern, and love from our greatest capacity. We're in our alpha brain state as alpha women or alpha men. We're in the infinity loop, creating awareness for the other. Infinite possibilities then become available to us. In constricted awareness, our constricted feelings come from our sense of problems and separation. The flow of information and energy in our bodies is hampered. We're stuck in habits and negative emotions that don't send us the messages that serve us. They might be true, but not the spiritual truth of what's true on the deepest level. Kind of like it could be true you just lost your job, but the spiritual truth is on the deepest level is you are not abandoned and totally screwed.
There might be a better job around the corner.
Yeah. They might be true, but not the spiritual truth of what's true on the deepest level. By honestly acknowledging them and observing them, we can move to expanded awareness where energy flows freely. We see the world with more compassion and understanding. We see new possibilities. It's just coming to me. I'm just seeing that spider on the ceiling coming from your 8. He can see the past, or she can. We're going to call her a she. The past, the future, the looking down, the widest view, has everything to sense and see coming from her 8. That's the wholeness that can hold the disturbance of the circumstance, of the relationship, of the conflict, of the predicament, and it can hold the expanded awareness, and it can hold the pure awareness of infinite possibilities.
And my mantra really came to me when you talked about the truth, but not the spiritual truth of, I believe the universe is working in my best interest even when I am not. And so to me, that's really what resonates with that is it's even when I am making the most terrible decisions in my life, the universe is still working in my best interest.
Yeah, and all things working together for good.
And I 1000% believe that. And I hope that maybe the belief of that will help you in your life as well. Give you some grounding perspective.
Because if I say in one of the chapters, it's like if we don't have, if grace isn't real, we're all screwed. I mean, I was just saying to God yesterday, it's like, if it's all about me doing everything right, I'm in trouble, Yeah. Pure awareness is what happens when we walk through the veil into another realm. We know all is well on the deepest level. That's the mystical part of our brain that's connected to numinous love, that holds everything, that knows all is well on the deepest level. We know all is well on the deepest level. We have a perspective that grounds us so deeply, we flow in the divine emotions of love, kindness, joy, compassion, and equanimity.
And that perspective is exactly what I was just saying, is the universe is working in our best interest even when we are not.
That's living on the mystery side. Mystery is real. It's what's happening, in the invisible field that's really more real than the physical. If we're constricted, we move out of that state as we learn to observe our state in stillness. That's why going to stillness and inner stillness and even being able to calm the physiology down to just go, I can hold all of this discomfort that I'm feeling in my body. I don't have to be afraid of it. I can let it flow and I can go to inner stillness. We ultimately move toward essence, which is pure awareness. By owning our feelings, that they belong to us, we allow them to tell us what they want to say or what stories behind them. Compassionately, we realize we no longer need those anymore, as we're no longer a threatened child. We're so much bigger than we thought we were. Riley, that's just what you were saying at the beginning about how you can go back and look at those memories and see them from a different point of view and go, I could see this differently and I'm okay now. I am no longer that threatened little child. That heals the PTSD. That heals the trauma. And I was saying this in a recent podcast. It's like, that's how the infinity loop heals trauma. It's like you go to that inner stillness and the lie gets pulled out and the truth comes back in. And that's how it's done.
Well, it's kind of like is it the Christmas Story with Scrooge and, where all the angels or demons or the people of the past show him the different perspectives, right? That open him up and change him. And so it's a way of like, well, we can do that in our own minds anytime we want, right? We can go back to a period of time that was positive or negative and grab what we need out of it to help us propel into the next stage of our life. And just remember that is a superpower that we have.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk about this as we get into our Numinous Love book, but having a relationship with our death and seeing everything as the eagle is flying over our lives and we're on our deathbed, and how we see our lives in the perfection that they were. Yeah. That's truly like the pure awareness.
We move out of constricted awareness as quickly as possible by first being aware we're constricted. Breathe, witness ourselves, have self-compassion, and unhook from the story that keeps us trapped. Describe what it feels like to you to be in constricted awareness. What will you do differently? I notice when I'm in constricted awareness, there's two major things. I start talking really, really fast because I am trying to express an emotion that's not usually even expressible, right? Like I don't have enough of the story and I'm trying to almost catch up or get ahead of the story by like talking really fast. That's one of the things I notice. And you'll notice it in your chest, right? Like you're not deep, you're not breathing as deeply as you should. You're in sort of the short, shallow breaths because you're so constricted and you feel the need to get whatever message out you need to, as if that's going to change their perspective or change how someone has made you feel when you're
trying to clean up the room with the lights out.
Right.
You're trying to clean everything up. I got to clean this up.
It's like I'm trying to do it quickly, like, because you left the house, told me to do it before you came home, and I hear the garage opening, and I never started doing it. The lights are off, and now I'm somehow supposed to try and clean it all up before you get in the house. And it said, what will you do differently? I think that's ultimately where the breathing, the taking the second to respond to, I think the biggest practice I do is trying to get other people's perspective. Am I in the wrong? You flip from anger to empathy. That anger and empathy must kiss. You go into empathy when you're in too much anger. And beyond empathy, I question my own feelings with other people's perspective. Well, that is the empathy. Oh, okay. How would you see it from their point of view? Like what is their point of view really is the true empathy. And that's where I'm going on a tangent, but I'm going to do it anyway. When I've seen people who you could observe them and go, wow, they are very highly narcissistic, but they'll talk about like they're so empathetic or they're empaths, but I call that cheap empathy. What I look for in empathy is how does that show up in intimate relationships when their ego is threatened? Do they stay in anger or can they go to empathy? And that's really the only thing I care about. Not that they have this, because right, not the words they say, but the fruit that their actions. Yeah, and this is just almost like the same thing we talked about, the social justice of following whatever everyone says. I'm like, well, that's cheap.
You just get to do, you put a black square on social media and that means you're in solidarity. That's cheap. That's not really empathy. You're just looking like they can almost be very narcissistic. Like, oh, look how great I am.
Going with the crowd is always the easier choice, and rarely creates the change that we truly want.
Yeah. So this is good that we're tying this back, because anger is when it is not in inner stillness and not dropped down, and it's somehow messing up our body and our ability to see, that is constricted awareness. And empathy going, whoa, what am I not seeing of that other person's point of view? That's the anger and the empathy must kiss chapter. You're immediately getting into more expanded awareness. What am I not seeing? And we just had a thing with someone in your life when we were talking about that.
Yeah, and what's your experience with expanded awareness, and how does it feel? You were saying, I would say it feels blissful, because it's you're transcending the triggering emotions, and there is very few times where it feels. There's something very satisfying about conquering your emotions in a time where you go, oh, I normally would have reacted in a way that I'm not okay with, right? Mm-hmm. Like my normal response would have been something that I'm not proud of. Mm-hmm. And so to move past that and have the practice of expanded awareness truly is just a warm feeling that coats your heart, because you know you're being more loving to yourself and the other person.
You can almost feel the new brain tracks laying laid down. And I would have to say what's sad to me is when I've seen clients in their 40s or, who want to live in expanded awareness, and they are so constricted when they get angry, but they're not willing to do the work. The spiritual practice that it takes daily to want and hunger and thirst after wanting that so much.
They have a hard time, especially the older you get, the less you've done this work on it, the more you're attached to your individual story. Yeah. And that's why it becomes harder and harder the older and older you get.
It's true.
It's like can't teach an old dog new tricks, because they're so stuck in their ways of being attached to their story, because it's worked for them so far, right? It's what has gotten them to where they're at. And especially if someone is successful, it's really hard for you to go, okay, yeah, you got here, but you created a bunch of emotional trash throughout your life. And now let's try and clean that up.
Yeah. You know what I'm also thinking too is when you don't react and you don't react out of your constricted awareness, it does feel like suffering. It feels like a death, because it's an ego death, and you are not in control. And the ego hit that you get because you are pissed off and you are freaked out, and you need to now spew your anxiety and your stress and your anger and your judgment and your frustration and your projection and your self-hatred and your shame on somebody else. There's an ego hit in that.
It's emotional cutting.
Oh, yeah.
It's emotional cutting.
Yeah, like to numb.
Yep.
To numb.
And you get the hit from the cut, from the pain. I'm the victim, so I'm allowed to lash out at others.
Entitlement.
I'm actually making the world worse, but I'm playing the victim. It's 100% emotional.
And
cutting.
they tie the people who really struggle with, they cannot hold in their negative emotions, and how that much that's tied with narcissism, because there's a certain entitlement involved. I am entitled to spew. And
that's almost what we very much talked about at the very beginning of the book, right? Of where people say, oh, I'm speaking my truth. And it doesn't matter what I'm saying, because it's my truth, even if they're berating someone or belittling someone.
As though their truth is the truth.
Right, yeah. As if they've been the watcher of all and have no perspective.
So this is really good, because Deepak teaches very much of realizing is that we really are awareness. We are essence. That is our identity. We are not this little ego. This is just having this experience, but we really are this pure consciousness. And it is an ego death, because when we decide to not react And it is an ego death, because to be in that expanded and pure awareness, you are detaching from the ego story, from you, that you are this ego that needs to defend and spew and be afraid. And the ego likes problems, because then it feels like substance. It doesn't like the spaciousness of being pure awareness.
Self-inquiry that leads to more awareness, right? So awareness is at a certain level just a word that we're trying to express the level of understanding and compassion to the bigger picture.
And awareness is contemplation. It's the ability to then see. It's the infinity loop eyes. You see yourself and the world and reality.
You see your perspective, and you see where your perspective is limited.
So you start to see everything differently.
You're either attaching to your thoughts or inquiring. There is no other choice. There is no doing both. There's one or the other. Byron Katie.
Mm-hmm. So Leo, who was my former partner and business partner, came up with these questions, and we're going to dive into them. We're always looking to simplify and make the principles as accessible as possible. On a company leadership retreat, Leo discovered that these questions got the team aware. It allowed them to be the watcher. Inquiry leads to more awareness. What am I thinking? It takes inner stillness, and this gets you out of the constricted awareness.
Well, this makes me think of a coaching that I had with a client where in their relationship, where he felt like anytime he brought up any type of healthy criticism or anything that he was trying to work on in the relationship, how she would shut down and cry and start beating herself up. I talked about the importance of framing the criticism with a question, ending it with a question instead of these kind of blatant attacks or statements of going, this is what I'm seeing. This is things I feel like we need to work on. And then going, how would that look like for you? Or how could I help you work on those things? And it immediately took the sting out of it. And he was saying they were able to really dive into a lot of subjects that were really causing her to shut down and cry because she was feeling inadequate. And now it was no longer about it being inadequate because they are a team, but by going, hey, the only reason I'm asking these questions is because I want to show up for you. And again, it's that question that really changes the energy.
That's the infinity loop couple, because it's always, you're on the same team. You're on the same team.
Well, and we're all on the same team.
Yeah.
The world is on the same team. I know there's people that are attached to say that we are not, but when we all hit the dirt, we all hit the same dirt. And that's one team.
So what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What's happening?
And how those all can be a little different, right? What's happening and how it's making you feel might all be related to how you're thinking about it, right? That's our superpower, is our perspective. So if we change how we're thinking about something, it might change how we're feeling about it, and it might change what's actually happening.
There's some teachers that say it's what you think leads to how you feel. Some will say, actually, no, it goes both ways. And your physiology can get stirred up that can cause you then to think something differently. It's coming.
The both and.
It's really the both and. What's happening? What stories am I telling myself about what's happening? That's the story. What story? And it's usually negative that we're telling ourselves about what's happening.
Human beings are addicted to negativity.
Yeah,
bias.
I mean, what was keeping us, again, alert and safe in our survival brain then becomes our default. Are they true?
Right? Just because you're seeing more violence, because we have access to more information, statistically, it's still the most peaceful time in human history. So again, what is true is all somewhat relative also is because it's so easy to be caught up in our restricted awareness into saying, well, it is terrible. There are wars. This is true. Yes. And there are still less than there was before. You just we're easier attracted to the negativity. So it's that
Can I
negativity
know
bias.
for sure they are true? Can I know for sure they are true?
Where can I fact check something? Where could I get another perspective? Can I put my hands on it?
That's where that's where the accountability partners, and when we do it for ourselves, our own self-inquiry, we have to go, well, that's not true that always happens. What's the data that shows that it's not true? How are my stories making me feel? What are my projections?
And I think those are so important because our projections are what people perceive. Your projections are you sharing your emotions with the world.
What do you mean?
In the sense that when we project, it's never from a clear, healthy mind state. It's either...
Projection meaning like a Sigmund Freud would say, I'm putting my negative emotions on you.
Right. And so that's what I was saying. So it's you expressing pretty much your negative emotions onto other people and making it other people's problems that you haven't dealt with your own emotions.
Or you're assuming that that's what they're thinking, right. Or you're attributing things to them that you're maybe disowning in you too.
That's the projection, right?
Yeah.
It's, the favorite one I like to go to is you're mad, and it's like, no, I'm not, but you telling me I'm mad is making me mad. And it's one of those things, maybe you're mad, and that's why you're assuming the other person is mad, right? That's that form of projection.
That's totally. Boy, is that one. What other explanations are there for what's happening? Which sometimes it's just mystery, the way God's working in our lives. How can I test my assumptions? We're going to learn all about that in the coming chapters.
Just by asking more questions, asking others. This is where life becomes a team sport.
Mm-hmm. How can I make space for the other? What am I not seeing?
I think that's one of the most important questions always, anytime we are emotionally charged.
Anytime we're in constricted awareness.
Yeah, it's the first question should be, what am I not seeing?
Because everything's constricted. The lights are out.
And I would say it's one of those questions you ask yourself and you're probably not going to be able to answer, but by asking it creates the second and creates the pause before you respond.
And it's opening yourself up to see what you need to see. It's saying to your psyche, I want to see what I'm not seeing.
And once you create that space, then you're able to ask others.
Because you're in that curiosity that is opposite from the critical, which is really opposite from the unhealthy ego. So you're already going, I'm willing to see beyond whatever I'm thinking that's protecting my ego, that's threatened. And feels like I can only see things that support my offended, fragile ego.
I know I'm emotionally charged, so I know that there's more I need to see.
How can I be more curious and shift from judging questions to learning questions? We're going to learn that too. You switch from being a judger to a learner just by the different questions. And we talked about that before. But one is curious and one's critical. How can I improve connection, communication, and collaboration? Oh, that's such a big one. How can I improve connection, communication, collaboration? If that was just that beauty in relationships.
But you can do it by asking the questions, right? Ultimately, you become more connected through more questions. You are communicating more clearly by having more questions because you're getting bigger picture. You're collaborating because you're not coming with all the information and you're asking more questions.
Mm-hmm. How can I contribute to getting more of the intended results everybody wants? What do I need from my superiors or coworkers to be successful? What do I need from my partner? to be successful? What do I need from my family to be successful?
What do they need from you? I think that's one of the best aspects of getting the results you want from other people is to be giving them the results they want from you.
Which is really, how can I improve connection,
right,
communication,
and so many times people don't even have the skills to communicate what they expect from you. And so to be the leader is to ask those questions before it becomes an issue, right? Is to truly go, oh, this seemed to not work exactly how you wanted. Before you even bring it up, let me go, how could I do that better?
What's possible?
Anything and everything.
Infinite possibilities.
Together we accomplish more.
Anything is possible, and in some ways, everything is possible. Yeah.
And together we accomplish more of those possibilities. What questions get your most attention? I mean, I definitely think, how can I improve the connection, which just ultimately comes back to the root is questions. These are examples of great questions that work great in the business place, but ultimately the root of this growth is questions. And where can I be asking more questions? In what situations would you incorporate them? Every situation in your life. Every situation in your life.
Children, parenting.
Oh, I think that's probably my favorite right now.
Parenting, man, it's so exciting.
Well, and when
helping children,
when they ask these questions of, oh, I'm trying to get my child to act a certain way, and how from what I hear from them is that it's so much a directive. Instead of, well, have you asked them what they need to create the environment for them to act the way you want to act? Because I bet they actually want to act the way you want them to act. They just need the right situation to get there.
They need the systems that support them.
Yeah. That's
exactly
Well, that's what this is all about, the systems.
That's exactly it. That's what so much is the issues with parenting, with couples. What needs to happen to help us keep the fridge clean? Tell us when you use the end of the milk so it can get on a list.
Right. Do we need to put up a whiteboard on the fridge for you to have the tool to just write it down every time?
Yeah. How do we
creating
get
the environment?
The backpack on the hook. It's exactly what do we need to do? It's a supportive, creating systems.
Instead of shaming, belittling, or hopefully people aren't calling their kids stupid, but in a lot of...
Hopefully not anymore.
But in a lot of ways, sometimes the way we choose to discipline or choose to direct is almost coming off of, oh, you're stupid. And instead of asking the questions and empowering them, you're trying to control the situation. Because I think that's so much of how we were taught to raise people.
And we're medicating our own shame. We're out of connection to our own hearts and our own inadequacies. So we're coming from our ego and separateness, and we're seeing them as the problem. We're not in the oneness of coming alongside and getting past our constricted awareness, feeling our constricted awareness. Oh my God, he did it again. He did it again. And then moving to the expanded awareness and the pure awareness where infinite possibilities come. And then the ideas come, the solutions come.
And the final question is exactly what we were saying. How will you set yourself up for successful awareness by slowing down, connecting to yourself, and going to silence and self-inquiry before reacting? Ultimately, how you do it is through breathing and asking questions. You don't freak out about your kid or your coworker not doing a task. You go and ask questions. Did something come up? Or did you find something more important? Did I not communicate the importance of this to me? How can I help you accomplish this task? Instead of blaming, shaming, creating the problem to be a bigger problem, right?
Catching somebody
making someone
wrong.
The enemy. Instead of trying to help someone in their own shortcomings, we so quickly turn people into the enemy. And this is what we're trying to stop with the Infinity Loop group. We're trying to change problems into opportunities of growth and transformation for yourself and the world around us. And with that, we just are going to come to an end today, and just want to thank you again so much for joining us on this journey. All those that has this is being helpful for. We are so glad that we could be there for you. Please like, share, comment. And we really want to continue this conversation and keep going deeper with all you out there that are taking the time and listening to all that we have to share. Thank you so much. Take care.